Good afternoon, good afternoon. It's Kate Caruth here, your content alchemist with some content gold on a Wednesday lunchtime. We've been asking lots of questions, from the very simple ones about how much something might cost, right the way through to complex things about how our process works. And now we're adding in some top tips to help you. So this video, we're going to talk all about newsletters, whether you do them weekly, monthly, anything in between that. We've got some tips and hints here to make them work better for you. So here are our tips. Tip number one is to have a newsletter. It is a really helpful part of your marketing strategy. It keeps you front of mind with whoever receives it. So what that can mean is, for example, let's take an example. You are a painter and decorator, and you put in place a monthly newsletter. So you come in January and you repaint someone's sitting room. Great, fantastic. And you add them to your newsletter list. And it talks about upcoming colours, new paints. It might mention members of the team or some interesting projects you've worked on. Do people really care and get deeply involved in the world of painting and decorating? Maybe not. However, supposing we get to November, 11 months after you painted that sitting room, and one of those customers, and that one of the customer that you painted that sitting room for, thinks, I really must get my dining room painted. Who was that lovely chap who did our painting and decorating back in January? Now, they might keep all their documents and they might look you up, but more often than not, they go to Google and they say, painter and decorator in my area. And if you're not top of the list, they might misremember who painted their sitting room back in January. So therefore, you've lost an opportunity. But if you're sending a regular newsletter, your name is staying front of mind. So that's a really good reason to have a newsletter. Second tip, know your audience. This is my top tip for every content. Depending on who you're sending your newsletter to, sets the content that you send them, the tone, and what you're looking for them to do, tells you what calls to action you want to have in there. So really be clear about who you want to attract to your newsletter. Tip number 3, set your frequency to be something you can manage. It's all very well saying you want a weekly newsletter, but you've got to be able to deliver that newsletter every week. So set the frequency so you can manage it, but also something that is going to be appropriate for your audience. Busy business owners probably don't want a newsletter every week anyway. You're actually going to get more people unsubscribing by sending too much content. But in the same way, you want to make sure that you send it often enough that keeping front of mind, the adding value piece of it, is all happening in the right way. Tip number 4, invite signups via your other channels. So everywhere that you have got people with eyes on you as a business, also give them the option to join your newsletter. You can click on the link, fill in a form, and be added to your newsletter mailing list. It's a great opportunity for them. If they're interested in what you do, you can add them to your newsletter. Tip number 5 is all about understanding whether to do your newsletter via email or via LinkedIn, which now has its newsletter feature if you are a content creator. So depending on where your audience is, goes back to tip 2 about knowing your audience, it might be more appropriate to email people, or it might be more appropriate to use LinkedIn, because that's how they're connecting with you, that's how they're consuming content. Tip number 6, give your newsletters a regular shape. Some sort of structure to it that makes it easy for you to know what to put in every month. If you look at our newsletter, for example, which you can sign up to if you visit our website, you'll find a link so that you can sign up. Tip number 4. You can see that there's a regular shape to it. We always reference a blog. We'll usually talk about a client we're working for or celebrate a win for a client. We will generally talk about something that I'm up to or the team is up to, and at the end, we'll be inviting people to go and have a look at one of our other channels. That's the general shape our newsletters always take. It just makes it easy for us, and it also makes it easy for our audience to navigate and find the things they're looking for. Tip number 7, is to think about the balance between value-adding, interesting content that someone might want to read, and the sales element of your newsletters. And this is where knowing your audience is incredibly important, because for, let's say, an accountant, you're more about the value-adding piece. You're reminding people that they need to do their tax return. You're telling them about the latest changes in legislation that might affect them. You're reminding them that there might be a grant available, that kind of thing. That's really adding value for you as a business to your clients and your customers. If you're in e-commerce, totally different type of business, it's going to be much more about, here's our latest product, 10% off if you order this weekend, Black Friday, those kind of offers, sales and offers. And the balance between them can be really different. You can mix and match. You might have a newsletter that's got a bit of one and a bit of another, or you might be doing campaign type newsletters where you're doing a little bit every day, giving a countdown to a particular offer. But again, it comes down to knowing your audience and deciding for yourself what's appropriate for your business. Tip number, I've lost count. Tip number 8, reuse your content. Don't feel you've got to invent something new for every newsletter. In fact, you can be reiterating something that you've already done, whether that is a video that you've already recorded, whether it's a blog you've already written, whether it's things that you've already done, or it could even be, here's a roundup of everything we said on social media this month. You can reuse content because what you're doing is representing and helping reinforce messages. So it's quite good to be doing that and to make things easy. And the final tip, actually not the most important, because knowing your audience is always the most important, but second most important, last but not least, look at your results. What's worked? Did the newsletter last month get a better result than the newsletter this month? And is that because the headline was different, or was the content different? How many people actually clicked in response to your newsletters? By looking at them, you're going to start learning what works and what doesn't, and then you can improve and adapt and grow. Those are my top tips for newsletters. If you would like help with your newsletter to either add value or to generate a bit more business for yourself, then contact us, arrange a conversation. We'll be happy to help. And of course, if you know anyone else who is grappling with their newsletter right now, then by all means share this post, tag them in the comments below. I will be back very soon answering another common question about the world of content. Have a golden afternoon.